Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my brother use my boat after he wrecked it last year? I, 32M, own a small boat that I bought a few years ago. It's nothing fancy, just a 20-foot fishing boat I take out on the lake on weekends with friends or my wife. I love it and worked hard to be able to afford it, and I'm pretty careful about maintaining it. Last summer, my younger brother Ryan, 28M, asked if he could borrow it for the weekend to take some friends out on the water. He's a pretty laid-back guy, and he's not always the most responsible person, but I figured it wouldn't hurt to let him use it for a day. I gave him a quick rundown on how to operate everything, told him to be careful and handed over the keys. Big mistake. Ryan ended up drinking with his friends while out on the water, which he swore he wouldn't do, and somehow managed to ram the boat into a dock when they were coming back. The damage wasn't catastrophic, but the fiberglass got scraped up badly and one of the railings was bent. It wasn't cheap to fix, like $2,000 in repairs, and even though Ryan apologized, he only paid me back for a fraction of it cause he's been tight on cash. I ate the rest of the cost and learned my lesson about lending him stuff. Fast forward to this year. Ryan recently asked if he could use the boat again for a redemption weekend, saying he'll be super careful this time and wants to make up for last year's mess. I told him flat out no, that I wasn't comfortable with him using it again after what happened. He got really defensive, saying I was holding a grudge and that it was just an accident and accidents happen. He's been sending me guilt trip texts ever since, saying he's grown up a lot and I should trust him more now. My parents have also chimed in, saying I should give him a second chance, that he feels bad about what happened and that I should let it go. They've even offered to cover any damages if something happens again, which, honestly, feels like a big red flag to me. My wife is on my side, saying it's our property and I have every right to say no, but now I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm being a little too harsh. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my brother use the boat, even though he swears he'll be more careful this time? Edit. Thanks, folks. I didn't want to be too harsh on my own family, but at the same time, this helps clear things up. Next story. Am I the a-hole for demanding that my niece, or her parents, pay me back for the hundreds of dollars of perfume she stole from me? I have a perfume collection that I started when I was a teenager slinging burritos as my first job. I have over 400 bottles at this point. I take great pride in my collection, and I use it. I'm also happy to give people decants, samples, of most of my bottles, let them sample a spray or two, give some bottles as gifts, etc. What I have a huge fucking issue with is my 17-year-old niece coming into my home under the guise of walking my dog, decanting bottles on her own and selling the samples to her little friends. She thinks that because I have so many bottles, I wouldn't notice some missing or getting massive dents in them. Well, little Miss Entrepreneur failed to realize that her private Instagram wasn't friends only or whatever, and I saw each and every fucking story with each price and sample she had. I tallied that shit up and got a pretty good estimate based on cost per ounce. Thankfully, she mostly picked the TikTok famous perfumes like Bianco Latte and Escapade Gourmand and didn't go for the rarest, niche perfumes. She did snatch an entire 2.5-ounce bottle of Baccarat Rouge, though, which runs $300 plus at most retailers, as well as full bottles of perfumes you can get at Sephora, like Marc Jacobs Daisy, Burberry Her Elixir, Flower Bomb, etc. Petty or not, I printed out the entire list of what she'd taken, price estimate, and handed it off to my sister, her mom. I said that I expect to be paid back, in full, and of course, her fucking sneaky little ass is never allowed in my home again. My sister got super pissy with me going on about how my niece is just a kid. Kids make mistakes, etc. I said yes, kids make mistakes, and this is a great way for my niece to learn from hers. Their argument is that now the money she was going to use for a car has to go towards paying me back. I don't care. She is lucky that I have no interest in involving the police, small claims, or any of that. But am I the a-hole because she is a teenager? Next story. Am I the a-hole for making my pregnant father-in-law cry when she kept asking why I changed my name? My brother, 30M, is married to Haley, 29F, and they're expecting a baby together. Last year I, 17F, officially changed my first name from Evelyn to Indy, which was a nickname form of my original middle name. My parents gave in after realizing how serious I was about being Indy and how I was not warming up to or growing into Evelyn. My brother and Haley want an older/vintage name for their baby, and Haley asked me about 5 months ago why I disliked Evelyn enough to change the name. At the time she brought up how popular the name has become and how vintage is back. I told her I didn't like vintage names and to me, it sounded really old-fashioned. I told her that popularity didn't influence my decision. She wanted to know my reason for disliking older names and why I liked something like Indy instead. I didn't mind her asking this first time. She brought it up again a week later, and she asked the same question and pressed more for why. She asked a third and a fourth time. I gave her the same answer and asked her why she kept asking me. I told her my answer wasn't going to change. By the 7th time she asked, she admitted she was worried her baby would hate having an older name and wanted to figure out what she could do to prevent what happened with me from happening to her. She also said she'd like me to rethink my name because she thought Evelyn was beautiful and she was sad I had chosen something like Indy over it. I asked her to stop so many times already, and I even asked my brother to stop her. He told me I needed to understand it was the hormones. I can easily say she has asked me this more than 25 times by now. I'm not exaggerating that number either. 2 weeks ago when she brought it up again, she felt like I had made a mistake changing my name and how 30-year-old me wouldn't be so against Evelyn. I told her that 30-year-old me could deal with it if that happened. She told me I didn't really have a good reason to like the name, and Indy seemed like the kind of name someone young likes, but not someone older. Then yesterday happened and I kinda lost my temper. She started out asking the same stuff, and the baby is almost ready to be born, so I know it's coming to an end, but she asked me to really think about why and help her because she couldn't figure out what she'd do differently than my parents did. Then she said they really shouldn't have let me change my name so young. I snapped and I told her to stop asking me the same question because my answer won't change, and her comments were not changing my mind because I don't like old-fashioned names. I told her I think they're awful and I'm sick and tired of hearing about how much better they are and having her try to make me find a reason she finds acceptable. I told her just like she hates Indy, I hate Evelyn and she needs to let it fucking go already. She burst into tears and my brother got so mad at me. My parents were also like, why did I have to speak to her so harshly? Am I the a-hole? Next story. Am I the a-hole for inviting 25 family members to my wedding 6 weeks to show time? I have had this Halloween wedding planned for 2 years. The venue I wanted has a wait list. All of a sudden my mom and grandma decided the wedding was satanic and wanted me to make last-minute changes. I told my mom and grandma firm no. For 2 years my family has known about this, and because I've told them now, half my mom's side thought they would be cute and say they aren't coming in a random ass power struggle. I told them fine and canceled everyone's invitations who complained or backed my mom or grandma on this. One of my sisters acted like she stepped out of bridesmaid duty, so I replaced her. It was about 25 people who decided to act stupid at less than the 6-week mark, so I sent out an uninvited invitation, and I sent out new QR codes for those attending the venue will check in by only those to let people in. My aunt, who was one of the uninvited, told me people are allowed to disagree with me, and that doesn't mean can pull an invitation from a wedding that they have made plans to attend. I told my aunt they had 2 years for complaints, but saying you are not going at 6 weeks before my wedding is bullshit, and everyone fucked around and found out. I will not be bullied by my family over this. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my parents I didn't have a kid? They did. And they need to take care of her, not me. My parents had me, 15F, when they were 18 and 19. They always made it so obvious they resented being parents so young, and added to that they never try to be good parents. I typically spend most of my time at friends' houses. I don't have extended family to rely on. They disowned my parents for having me so young. So friends' houses were a positive in my life that made me feel more comfortable than being at home with my parents. My parents never did the typical parent stuff like helping with homework or showing up to support me at school. I don't think they ever attended a parent conference for me. They ignored a lot of stuff I needed to get signed, and I'd have to get right in their face on the last day to get signatures. My birthday and Christmas have never been a big deal or celebration. They do celebrate their wedding anniversary, but that's a them thing. When they told me 2 years ago they were expecting a baby, it really surprised me, but then it hurt because sometimes they said stuff that made me feel like I didn't exist. Like how they were so excited to have a baby and how they couldn't wait to be parents. A friend of my mom's did remind her of me, but then she and dad said I was basically the too early practice run, and this was the real deal. When my sister was born, they were so attentive to her that I ceased to exist completely. I got sick and my school was trying to call someone to pick me up early, but they ignored the calls. And when I got home, they had taken the baby out for a family day. When they got home, they hadn't even realized the school called because they turned off their phones to enjoy family time. My mom quit her job a month after my sister was born. She wants to be a stay-at-home mom, and she and dad want at least one more kid. My dad leaves work early on Fridays so he can spend more time with the family, mom and sister. My parents tried to have another kid for over a year, and mom isn't pregnant yet, so they're jumping to fertility treatments. They told me I needed to watch my sister for a few hours every week while they attend those appointments, and they gave me this detailed list of stuff she needs and what I'm going to do with her. I told them I wouldn't, and that they had her so they needed to take care of her because she's not my kid. My parents told me it's a few hours a week and not a huge deal. Dad told me I needed to look at it as paying back all they did for me. I said no and told them they don't give a crap about me, so why would I want to help them? Am I the a-hole? Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife she's fucking? I, 35M, have been married to my wife, 32F, for 5 years, and we've been struggling financially for the past few months. I lost my job about 3 months ago, and while I found part-time work, it doesn't pay nearly as much as before. We've had to cut back on a lot of things, but it feels like no matter what we do, we're still living paycheck to paycheck and even pulling from savings. Recently, my mom, 65F, came over to visit, and she noticed how stressed I was about the money situation. She offered some advice on how we could save money. Things like cutting down on takeout, meal prepping to avoid buying groceries multiple times a week, and switching to cheaper brands. My mom has always been frugal, especially when she was raising me and my siblings on a tight budget. I thought it made sense, especially since we're really trying to save wherever we can. I asked if she was willing to go through our spending and show where we could cut down. My wife agreed with this. She made a whole spreadsheet about our spending, and we are spending way too much on fun stuff. We don't need Starbucks every day and so on. It also became apparent that most of the fun spending was my wife. TBH, my wife didn't take the breakdown well and started arguing with my mom that her spreadsheet was wrong. She said that my mom's way of doing things is outdated and doesn't work for us. She doesn't want to give up buying organic produce, and she likes having variety in what we eat each week. I tried to explain that we needed to make some sacrifices if we wanted to get out of this financial hole, but she kept insisting that things weren't as bad as I was making them out to be and that we just needed to ride it out. My mom left at this point and we were still arguing, and she told me she couldn't give up her takeout. She also went on about my mom being wrong. That's when I lost my patience and said, "You're F*** and wrong. My mom is right. She managed to raise 3 kids on one income, and we can't even cut back on groceries for a few months." My wife got really upset, saying I was being a huge jerk for winding up with my mom and that my mom is outdated. She's barely spoken to me since, and now I'm wondering if I went too far. But the way I see it, we need to be realistic about our situation, and my mom's advice could actually help us get back on track.